when you were working there, what did you observe?
I observed numerous employees, city workers, running batches of ballots through the tabulators countless times without discarding them first. The tabulating machines would jam 2 to 3 times an hour. When they would jam, the correct process would be to pull out the problem ballot that jammed. Say the problem ballot was number 24 out of 50. I wasn't allowed to touch any hardware at all. I would assist them, tell them to pull out this ballot, put the problem ballot on top. In Michigan, our ballots from the tabulators don't just drop into steel ballot boxes. They are now, as they got tabulated, they are now on top of the tabulating machine. Okay? So instead of them taking these, so say, let's keep it number 25 is the problem ballot, it got jammed. So the computer would throw an error. It would say ballot number 25, there's an error. I would say pull out ballot number 25, slowly pull it out, put it on top, take the ballots that had already been tabulated, which are on top of the tabulating machine now, put them all back in a stack, discard the entire batch, and re-scan it. Instead of discarding, they were just re-scanning, counting ballots 9 to 10 times, counting votes 9 to 10 times.
So they were counting the same ballot, the same vote, 9 or 10 times?
Yes, sir. They were counting them 9 or 10
How many times did you observe that?
These machines would jam 2 to 3 times an hour. Each machine, there were approximately 22 to 24 tabulating machines in the TCF center. I observed it thousands of times.
Thousands of times? And how many were there? 20 machines, approximately?
Approximately between 22 to 24 machines.
And were there any Republicans who were observing, or just Democrats?
I saw very few Republicans, about 3 total.
How about those 20 machines? Did you see any of them observing those 20 machines where the ballot was being put in 10 or 20 times?
Big question. I got some of them questioning me. My manager had came up to me. I had called my manager over to a specific tabulating machine. I showed him a number on it, which was close to 500. It should never go over 50. Ballots come in batches of 50. I said, we have a severe problem here. Nick, autonomous, which is a part owner of Dominion. And he said, Melissa, I don't want to hear that we have a problem. He said, we are here to assist with IT. We are not here to run their election. That is exactly what he said to me. At that point, I was just really frustrated and upset. I could tell what was going on. I knew what was going on at that point.
What was going on?
He was in on it. They were all in on it.
In on what?
They were cheating. It was very, very apparent. It was apparent he knew. It was apparent that he was in on it. And when he caught on to me knowing that he was in on it, he just wanted nothing to do with me.
Now, did there come a time when 2 vans pulled up?
Yes.
In the back?
Yes, sir.
Late at night?
Yes.
Tell us about that.
Approximately 4 o'clock, the garage door of the TCF Center opened. The counting room in the TCF Center is in the basement. So when the garage door opened, a van pulled up, one on day shift, one on night shift. They were supposed to be for food because they were short on food for the workers. That's what they said over the microphone. That's what Daniel Baxter said. He said they had food for 1/3 of the workers, and that they would provide food and it would be there shortly. Well, food never came out of these vans.
Yes, what's your point of order, Representative?
We have these people coming in
testifying, making claims, they should be under, we should have them under, what do you call it?
Oath.
Under oath.
Representative, we don't
Under
do
oath
that.
here.
Representative,
Here's my affidavit.
we're not going to do
I'm
that.
under oath.
You're out of
I have
order.
an affidavit. I'm under
You're out of
oath.
order, Representative. We
Mr.
don't do
Chairman,
that here in
Mr.
Michigan.
Chairman, she
We've
has-
never done that.
I wrote an
Mr.
affidavit.
Chairman,
We're gonna move on.
she has an
That Biden
affidavit.
never has done.
She has an affidavit under oath.
And it should not be
Representative.
under oath. Hold your oath.
Please continue, and if we could have fewer back and forth, and maybe you can tell your story. No, I'm talking with Mr. Giuliani. We really want to get through this, and this is sort of a format that is a little unusual to our committee. So if it's possible to tell a little more of your story, and I understand you're trying to speed it up, but we want to make sure we get through everything today, Mr. Giuliani.
And read some from your affidavit. That's your affidavit.
Sure.
Under oath.
So I have 19 things in my affidavit. I was at the TCF Center for 27 hours. I'm a mother. I have 2 children, and I have 2 degrees. I'm very, I would never, I don't know any woman in the world that would write an affidavit under oath just to write it. You know, you can go to prison for this. So anyways, I want to make this very clear. I was initially supposed to work at the Detroit Department of Elections building. That was an order by my manager, Nick Economaganis, part owner of Dominion. I have it all in emails. I was trained on the adjudication and tabulation process. So in the email, it says you are to park in a parking lot and get shuttled over to this, they referred to it as the Chicago warehouse. I know for a fact there was illegal activity going on there. People have pictures of people carrying ballots out of that place. There is pictures of vans full of ballots coming out of that place. If it wasn't for my mother, I would have went there. My mom told me no way. You know, this sounds really, really weird. And I have 2 young children, as I stated, that I needed access to my vehicle in case something happened. I ended up telling them that, and they said, okay, we'll put you at the TCF Center. Well, Samuel, there was 5 employees, 3 permanent employees of Dominion, 2 contract employees, me, a contract employee, and there was a 90-year-old man. Last name Smiley. I have all of his paperwork. I have all their names, last names. 4 employees that were scheduled to work in the city of Detroit that were not at the TCF Center were all at this Chicago warehouse, which was the city election department building. Anyways, so I also witnessed there was a point in the night where Samuel and Nick said that there was a big data loss. They started freaking out, stepped off the stage, got on their phones. I asked them what was going on. They said it was taken care of. Nick sent Samuel over to this warehouse for about 3 hours. When he got back, I said, where were you? Where'd you go? He said, I was at the warehouse. And I said, what were you doing there? And he's like, you know, nothing. They just needed my help. Well, I said, where is this warehouse? And he said, because I wasn't putting 2 and 2 together yet that I, you know, was initially supposed to work there because I'd never even looked up the address. And what I believe is it wasn't a data loss. It was actually when they found out Trump was ahead 100 100,000 votes, and they sent Nick over there to assist with these ballots that came in these vans full of ballots that people can attest to that they witnessed being carried out of these vans at the TCF Center. I didn't see any ballots being carried out of vans. I'm not going to lie. I didn't see anything being carried out of them, but I know people who have and that did see this occurring. But I also witnessed the adjudication process. Numerous adjudicators machines were all the ballots were being judged by two Democrats. I heard them talking. One woman said to another woman, "Are you a Republican? Or are you a Democrat?" She said, "I'm a Democrat." And she said, "Well, so am I. Let's sit together." Sat together all night judging ballots. Thousands of ballots got judged all night by the reason the rule's there is so it can be a fair process. It wasn't a fair process. It wasn't a fair process at all. And the tabulating problem with them running numerous ballots through these tabulators and just continuing to do it. I had a friend that I knew for over 20 years, and he came up to me and said, he was working the night shift. He came up to me and said, "Melissa, we did not get any training at all. None." He goes, "I have no idea what I'm doing." He was with 3 other people. I said, I just told my manager that. I said, "I could tell you guys don't know what you're doing." And he said, "Nope, we were trained on the adjudication process, not the tabulation process." And I said, "So you don't know what you're doing?" And he said, "Nope." I said, "Great, that's just great." Because nobody was helping me. I was, running around assisting these people all night long. And it was all day and all night. It was crazy. And they were running these ballots through without discarding them countless times. There was so many ballots that ran through these tabulators numerous times. I mean, without any oversight at all. I mean, there's so much. This election, I will say, these Democrats took every avenue possible to commit fraud in this election. And what I saw on the 3rd and 4th was over 20 counts of fraud taking place in front of my face. And this isn't counting, the ballots that are found in rivers, the ballots found under rocks, the ballots, that ended up.
Representative, please. Representative, do you have a point of order?
I love how you can
What's
just
your
say
point of
whatever
order?
you want to say.
Do you have a point of order, Representative?
She's just.
Cynthia wants to defend the fraud.
This is funny.
All right. Ma'am, please continue.
Yeah, so,
And also, by the way, I mean, can you maybe speak to your experience? I know we've heard stories of ballots being thrown in rivers, but I want to make sure we're speaking to your experience because we have limited time and we got to
Absolutely.
get our questions in and the
Okay,
other
well-
witnesses. So is there more to your experience? And then,
well, okay, I called the FBI
okay,
on the 8th, November 8th. I talked to 2 separate women, over 40 minutes. The first one, gave her all my information. The phone mysteriously cut out, and she never called me back. I was waiting for her to call me back. She never called me back. I had to call them back, and they never called me back. Never got a call back. Still haven't got a call back. And I had somebody else working on it that has a neighbor that's an old FBI agent, and still haven't heard back from that.
Can I ask you just one last question?
Sure.
Melissa? So how many ballots would you estimate in front of you that you observed were counted multiple times in the machine? Can you put a number to it, an estimated number?
At least 30,000.
At least 30,000. Okay. Thank you. Okay.
thank you. And I guess I'll ask a question. I just want to understand. So what is What is your role with Dominion? Can you clarify that?
Okay, you're welcome. My role with Dominion was to assist with IT for the election.
So are you, you're some kind of contract employee?
I was a contract employee, yes.
Okay, of what organization?
I'm sorry.
So were you were like a contract employee of Dominion, or was there some
So I have my
contractor?
resume everywhere,
Yeah.
you know, and because I was laid off from Ford,
Mhm.
so they just found my resume and called me and said, do you want to work the election, the 3rd and the
I
4th?
see, but you were employed directly by Dominion.
Did Dominion pay me? No. PDS staffing paid me.
Okay.
Because they called me, but I was working for Dominion. Yes.
Okay.
Something very, very suspicious too, must I add, that we were not allowed to wear name tags at all. We were not allowed to talk about who we worked for. They were very secretive. They didn't want anybody knowing anything about them.
And so I just want to make sure I understand you correctly. So you said you're alleging that you heard or that you witnessed ballots being put in the machine, run through, counted, and then put through it again? Is that what you're alleging?
Without discarding.
Mm-hmm.
That is what I am telling you to be a fact.
And and how many times did you witness this happening?
I witnessed it in a 27-hour period, thousands and thousands of times.
Yeah, that's very interesting, and I will note, Dominion won't come before this committee. I've asked them, and so far they've refused, and I do want them to come before this committee because we need answers from them about how their machines
missing.
work. So we're going to continue to try to get them here. But with that, I'll go to Representative LaFave.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and I am not sure how I'm going to do this with one question, but I'm going to try my best anyway. So, with these tabulator machines, of which you estimate there are approximately 22 to 24, I guess I'm not understanding. So, you place batches of 50 on top of the machine?
No. Okay, so, I'm gonna try to explain it to you as if it's a printer, okay?
Thank you.
Okay, so, a printer, when the papers come out of the printer, that's where these tabulators, that's where you would feed the 50 in, okay? Now, on top of the printer, right, so where the scanner would be, right? If it's like a 4-in-1, right? So, that's where these ballots would come out after they had been tabulated, okay? So, if one jammed, number 25 jammed, right, then it would put up an error. Discard, rescan. Ballot number 25 has an issue. So, they would then take all the ballots that had been tabulated from the top, right, that are now on the top, the 24 that are on the top, the ones that are on the bottom that haven't been tabulated yet, okay? And number 25, the problem ballot, they would put number 25 on top. They would discard the entire batch, and then they would rescan it. Instead of discarding it, they would rescan them, counting those 24 again, okay? Now, let's say it was out of 50, number 48 that jammed. That's 47 being counted again. I'm just using you know what I'm saying? So, does that clarify that? Okay.
It does. And basically you put batches of 50 in until you're done with that precinct, right?
That's what they would do, yes. But a lot of these workers would they would get a batch of 50, and then they wouldn't get another batch for like 10 minutes. So then the ballot box was behind them, the steel ballot box. So they would have this batch of 50 in front of them for 10 minutes. with no oversight. So they would run them through again with no oversight. They just had no idea what was going on. And if they did know what was going on, I'm giving them the benefit of the doubt, right? So I'm saying they have no idea what's going on. Who knows? They did. I have no idea.
That was
I know
helpful.
what my friend said.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative C.A. Johnson. You're on our list. Did you have a question? Okay. Representative Camilleri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for your testimony. Going back to the ruling from Judge Timothy Kenny, he writes that your description of the events at the TCF Center does not square with any other affidavits.
Yeah.
He says that there are.
Time of day?
Excuse me, I'm speaking.
Please,
Thank you.
let's let the representative finish,
Go ahead.
and then you can.
He writes that there are no other reports of lost data or tabulating machines that jammed repeatedly every hour during the count. He also writes that neither Republican nor Democratic challengers nor city officials substantiate your version of these events. The allegations simply are not credible, is what Judge Kenny writes. So my question for you is, you're making claims here today that there's systematic fraud in what's going on in our elections. Are the courts also tied up in that fraud?
Let me tell you what I did by accident, okay? I gave Channel 7 an interview that they tied in to that and made me the witness that's uncredible. Guess what? There's going to be a couple behind me that are going to say the same thing I just said. And
The witness before you was also proven not credible as well by
oh
the
no,
same
she
judge.
wasn't
She
because
was.
she wasn't even there.
Representative
The
Camilleri,
very
let's
first
let her
time
finish,
she has
please.
talked. The very
Ma'am.
first time.
So I just want to understand. I don't know what exactly all the things that are being talked about there are, but can you tell us what you said today is the truth? Is that correct?
Sir, I wrote a written affidavit. Yes, it is 100% true.
Okay. And did other people observe this?
Absolutely. And behind me, you're going to hear a couple.
Okay. And we'll hear
And
from them,
let me just
hopefully.
state this. I was an IT worker on the stage. I was working with Dominion. I had no poll workers were not allowed on the stage. The data loss, nobody would have heard about that besides me, Samuel, and Nick. Okay? Just like nobody knows that Samuel went to the Chicago warehouse besides me because I worked for Dominion. They didn't. They're not going to hear that part. You know what I mean? The poll workers are not going to know that Samuel, they're not even going to know who he is. They're not going to know that he went to the warehouse.
So, I think what Representative Camilleri is asking is perhaps why is it that more people, and I know we have a couple here today, but why is it that we're not having more people come forward? I mean, it seems like if there
I'll
was
tell
all
you
this
why.
widespread fraud, that we'd have dozens and dozens of people.
I'll tell you why. My life has been destroyed. My life has been completely destroyed because of this. I've lost family. I've lost friends. I've been threatened. My kids have been threatened. I've had to move. I've had to change my phone number. I've had to get rid of social media. Nobody wants to come forward. They're getting threatened. Their lives are getting ruined. I can't even get an actual job anymore. I can't. Because Democrats like to ruin your lives. That's why.
All right. Let's
Just like they do to Trump.
let's move on to Representative Steve Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So obviously these allegations are very troubling. This is my question here. If these ballots were run through multiple times, as you've alleged, I think you said possibly up to 30,000 times, definitely thousands of times being counted. When we examine the poll book and see who voted, and we count those numbers,
Yes.
would they then not line up with the total number of votes coming out of Detroit?
Just later. The poll book is completely off. Completely off.
Off by
That poll-
30,000?
I'd say that poll book is off by over 100,000. That poll book. Why don't you look at the registered voters on there? How many registered voters are on there? Do you even know the answer to that?
No, I guess I'm trying to get to the bottom
Zero.
of this here.
Zero. There's zero.
So, my question then is, if the
Guess how many? Wait. What about the turnout rate? 120%.
Let's let Representative Johnson ask his question.
so the poll book number. Okay, there's two things that could happen here. Either the poll book number, if ballots are counted multiple times, there's two options. Option number one is that the poll book numbers are not going to match.
They don't.
The actual. Not by thousands and thousands of votes. That's not what we see right now.
Take a look again. Take a look again.
Option number two is that they essentially were filling in names of people who didn't vote.
Dead people too?
So is that?
Let's let
your
Representative
suggestion?
Johnson ask his question, and then when
I thought
he's
that
done,
was his answer. Okay.
Well, I guess that's my question here is why we're not seeing the poll book off by 30,000 votes. That's not the case.
What did you guys do? Take it and do something crazy to it?
I'm just saying the numbers are not off by 30,000 votes. So
I know what I
saying
saw.
That they're filling in.
I know what I saw, and I signed something saying that if I'm wrong, I can go to prison. Did you?
okay,
I'm just trying to ask you a legitimate question here.
Yeah, let's let Representative Johnson ask his question, and then don't interrupt him. And then,
Okay.
and then if you want to respond to it, that's fine. And, did you have more, Representative?
Yeah, I guess I just want to keep following back up with the poll book. So are we saying that the poll book is either wildly off, or that they are
Wildly
filling in names?
It's wildly off, and dead people voted, and illegals voted.
Okay.
So that's my
I
answer.
think we're going to move on.
Yeah.
Representative LeGrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So, ma'am, can I ask you a simple question?
Sure.
When did you convey the narrative? When did you communicate substantially the narrative that you've given us today? At what do you recall the date that you gave that to the Trump legal team, to Mr. Giuliani and the woman sitting next to him?
To Mr. Giuliani,
To the team.
them, I'm working with a different attorney.
Well, they're here with you now, and they heard your story. And it's not the first time they heard it. When did you tell them?
I have
When did you
not
give them
spoken
essentially
directly
the narrative
to Mr. Giuliani.
I'm not asking you to finesse here. I'm asking you, when did you tell them the narrative that
When
you're
did I
telling us
write
now?
my first affidavit? November 8th.
Thank you. That's a great place to start. Thanks.
Right.
All right.
But does that answer your question?
I
Because
think it does.
it was sent
If
to
it's-
Lauren
if it's-
McLaughlin.
If the
And
narrative,
I don't
I
know
think
if
we're
you
good here.
got it.
We'll move on. So, thank you, Representative LeGrand.
Just clarify for the record, I met her for the first time today
Mm-hmm.
and talked to her for the first time yesterday.
Mm-hmm.
But if you're saying the affidavit is essentially consistent with her testimony today, and that was submitted on November 8th, that's great. That's what I wanted to know.
I can't hear you, I'm sorry.
That's okay. I think everybody else did.
His statement was, I think his statement was, if the affidavit matches the testimony today, you're good. Is that what you said?
Of course it matches it.
Okay. All right. With that, I think we'll move on to our next person, if that's all right. Thank you for your testimony today.
Andrew Cito and Hima.
Is that right, or are we going to do the Colonel?
I thought we'd do Andrew and Hima next together.
Okay.
They're the
let's
two
do it.
people that she mentioned.
All right, that makes sense since you mentioned it.
Maybe they can do it together.
All right, and thank you. And
Then we'll do the Colonel.
okay, great. And if we could, I hope that we're respectful to the representatives here, both the Republicans and the Democrats. I think we're trying to ask legitimate questions. We're trying to get to the bottom of what happened. And I know the Senate had 7 hours of testimony yesterday. They heard from a lot of people. We've asked, a few more to come today, but we really, truly have, most of us at least, have genuine questions about what happened. And I think they're sincere in many cases. There were a couple that weren't in the early part, but I know with Representative S. Johnson and Representative LeGrand, they were legitimate, fair questions. So we just want to make sure we're respectful to the representatives. I'm also asking the representatives, be respectful to these people. I mean, these are regular citizens of Michigan who've seen things, please, who've seen things that they want to talk about. And you know what? It's pretty intimidating, I'm sure, to come to a legislative committee. Please, everyone. But it's difficult to come to a committee like this and to tell your story. Please, everyone. When you come to a committee like this, it can be tough. It can be intimidating. I know these are very hard stories for people to tell. I just ask that we try to be respectful of one another. And also, we can't, we don't want everybody to hear people yelling in the back. So with that, can you please say your names and tell us why you're here? And we look forward to hearing your stories.
My name is Hima Kolanagi-Reddy.
My name is Andrew Cito.
And can you tell us why you're here?
I was a poll challenger, and I got trained by MIGOP and also
Where were you a poll challenger?
at TCF Center.
In Detroit.
Yes.
And were you too?
Yes, I was a volunteer at the TCF Center on election night.
Okay.
I got trained by MIGOP and also by the Election Integrity Fund, but then I received my credentials from the MIGOP. So on the 3rd of November, I was representing MIGOP on the floor, and all I was doing that day was just stand behind the tabulators. I do IT. I have an IT staffing firm, so IT is my specialty. I was standing behind the tabulator machines, and I could tell right away that most of those people did not know what to do when a ballot gets jammed. And I had to literally stand behind them and say, you need to discard when a ballot gets jammed. And just like the previous witness, what she was saying, yes, that those tabulators were getting jammed, at least, like she said, 3 or 4 times an hour. And if they knew what to do when there is an error, they were doing it right. To explain to the other person who was asking, when you take the jammed ballot out, you have an option to discard the number. There is a column that says, that's actually tabulating. That's incrementally tabulating every time a ballot gets scanned. So when a ballot gets jammed, you have an option to go and say discard. Then it makes it 0. But you also have an option to continue. So what happens is when you take those one jammed ballot plus the rest of the ones that got tabulated and put them through again, like feed them, if you say continue tabulating, it will add to that 24 or 25 wherever it got jammed, and then again rescan this entire thing. Like she said, the number only has to be 50. There were machines, at least not the machines I was guarding. I was behind tabulator number 5 and 6, and because I was on top of them, telling them every single time, stepping forward and saying you didn't make it 0, those machines were doing okay. But I did come across a couple of other machines where the numbers were 300, 400. It's not supposed to be. But I could clearly tell that some of those people didn't know how to discard and start again. So was there an overcount? Yes. Was it off by thousands? I can't tell. I only can tell what I saw. And I witnessed that some people didn't know what to do when it was getting jammed. I don't know how much of training they all had, but some people did not know IT. Similarly, at the county board too, where I witnessed this big stack of ballots that came in with a note saying not in EPB/S, which is not in election poll book or system. I didn't even know that can even happen, that you can actually have ballots that are not in the poll book or in the system and still be fed into the system. These people were manually entering it, and I have the table numbers where this was getting done, like the counting board numbers, and they didn't know. They were manually feeding it with a birth date of 1900 something. And when I asked the supervisor why they were manually being fed, they said they did not know. They're only doing their job, and if I have a problem, I could go talk to somebody up there. But the thing is, they didn't even know how to unlock the voter record when it gets jammed. Because I'm in IT and I can understand the code behind it, I had to literally help them. I'm like, you have to go do this and do that. And that's when they kind of knew. So I could clearly tell most of these people didn't have enough training, and they were just monotonously doing their job. And whether it was intentional or not, again, I cannot witness to that. I can only tell what I was there for. And again, I just want to tell everybody here that when we became a poll challenger, our intent was not to get into fights with anybody. I'm an immigrant, and this country gave me a platform to be what I am today. I run a successful IT business. I'm one of the fastest 50 growing companies in America. And I really love this country. When I became a citizen of this country, it was a choice I made. I had to give up my Indian citizenship to become a U.S. citizen. It's a choice we all make. It's that's a country we grew up in, but this is a country we chose to live. So we just have a lot of respect for this country. Putting ourselves out here, it's not fun. Trying to get our names out there, trying to just kind of intimidate us. You have to understand, coming to a country where we have nobody, and then start our life here, it takes a lot of courage. So we do have courage. And especially for me to do this, it's really scary. It was very scary because I am a very private person. I have no social media accounts. I just like to live a very private life. But I knew what was at stake from what I witnessed at TCF, and my heart broke because I had a lot of respect. I still have a lot of respect for this country, and I don't believe in racism as like the mainstream media narrative. This country has given me a lot, and I'm very thankful for it. So today when I'm doing this, it's not because I'm trying to say who's good or who's bad. I'm just saying that this needs to be fixed. In a country like India, we have a national identification card without which we cannot vote. When we come into this country, we have a retina scan, we have fingerprints, everything when we are entering into this country through a border. How is that a vote, which is the single most important thing any person can do, is actually being cast without an ID, without any kind of oversight, and those ballots getting duplicated without an oversight, and all of this fraud that was happening? It was heartbreaking. So that's why I decided to put myself here. Another thing that I noticed is that there were Democratic challengers there. I don't even call them challengers. They were agitators. They were only there with one purpose. When GOP people or nonpartisan people signed up, we were only trying to ensure that there was integrity. Whereas when Democratic challengers signed up, their only purpose there was to intimidate the GOP people and get them out. So that was what was happening on the 4th when I got on the floor. I didn't have my GOP tag on, so automatically I was assumed to be a Democrat. And I have seen some women who came to me and I said, let's get these MFs out. And she was singing that song. And for me, I don't listen to secular music, and these days you can't even tell what is cussing and what is a song. So I thought maybe she was really singing a song. But then when I saw that she was targeting white male Republicans, accusing them of something like your mask slipped, you were not 6 feet away, so you need to go out, and your phone was out, and they were really intimidating all these white people. And I put myself out there, tried to help them, saying, why are you getting them in trouble? And they said, why are you taking their side? Then I showed my GOP tag, and then she said to me that I am on the wrong side because I had a GOP tag on. I was literally shocked that somebody can judge me because of my political affiliation and say whether or not I'm on the right side or wrong side. I can think for myself. But then at that point I saw that Republicans were getting escorted, and so many people got escorted that we became pretty scarce. We couldn't even man, we had only one person manning 4 or 5 tables because we were so low on numbers, and there were so many Democratic challengers there. So I just went to Election Integrity Fund and got my nonpartisan tag. And the reason I did that was not because I was not there for my party or trying to do something on behalf of my party. I'm just trying to ensure that the right thing is being done. So when I got the nonpartisan tag, at the counting board, the poll workers were very respectful because of my nonpartisan tag. But when I had the GOP tag, the first thing they said is 6 feet. You know the rule or you will be sent out. And I'm like, when I had the nonpartisan tag, a lot of rules didn't apply to me. So that just told me that, those poll workers, the Democratic challengers, ACLU, and so many other people that were there, their only job there was to block the GOP challengers from doing their job. And when I was with the nonpartisan tag and talking to Democratic challengers, most of them didn't even know what to challenge in a ballot. When I asked them a question, when I was asking supervisor a question, those people were literally confused because they didn't even know what I was asking. And then when I asked one lady, where did you get trained? She said, trained for what? Because they didn't know what they were there for. Their only job, I could tell there, was to block the GOP people from challenging or intimidate them and get them out.
And did you have something to say also about your experience?
Yeah, so because I was a volunteer, I came in for my training around 9:30 p.m. at the TCF Center. 10 o'clock, we went down to the floor. I was stationed by the center of the room. The center of the room, they have all the boxes lined up, and then they have one table full of the duplicate ballots. As I'm sure you're all familiar with duplicate ballots, so they have a table for duplicate ballots. Throughout the entire night, many employees were conducting theft of duplicate ballots. So they would come up to the table of duplicate ballots, grab 3 or 4 duplicate ballots, run back to their table, give one to another person at another table, and never complete the duplicate process. They would stash the ballots under boxes, and I would have to stand there for about 5 minutes and just wait for a duplicate process, and they would just look at me, and it was never ever completed. So that happened throughout the entire night. Then around 4:30 a.m. we had an announcement that a new shipment of ballots were arriving, and these boxes of ballots were brought in by Mr. Baxter himself at 4:30 a.m. from the rear of the room. So I personally witnessed Mr. Baxter carrying boxes from the rear of the basement of the TCF Center into the tables. So each box I approximate 600 ballots, and it was like a full. What you have to know is that these tables, there's about 7 tables. They were 10-foot tables each. Every table was full of boxes of ballots. It's not tens of thousands or 20,000s. I approximate 50,000 ballots were brought in. Now, were all of those ballots brought in from the rear entrance to the TCF Center? I don't know. They were brought in from the TCF Center, but there was a lot more than just the ones that were brought in from the rear entrance to the TCF Center. And I'm talking, this is the 6 a.m. This is when we're starting at 6 a.m. 4:30, 5 a.m. It was 50,000 ballots on the table, equal to the 2 rounds that we did before. We did a round around 10 p.m. to about 1 a.m. and then 1 a.m. to about 4 a.m. And then the boxes were brought in from the rear around 4:30. Then they had the shift change from around 5 to 6. So with the shift change, most of the volunteers were tired at this point. They only expected to be there from 10 p.m. to 5 a.m. So 90+% of them left at 5 a.m. I decided to stick around. So they had the shift change. At 6 a.m., Mr. Baxter and his management team got back on the microphone and said, "This is what the new shift change, right? The new employees says this is what democracy is supposed to look like." Right in front of everyone, the whole room cheered. So this is how you know it's a good sign of a violation, that there's an imbalance of poll workers. This is the new shift. Even the first shift before that, I would say the same thing. But this shift, you can tell it's the same, again, another imbalance of poll workers, because the whole room cheered. So based off my sampling of a dozen duplicate ballots from 6 a.m. to about 2 p.m. the next day, because I was doing duplicates, from these duplicate ballots I observed, none of them were for Trump. None of them. And from the other 2 shifts or 2 rounds that we did earlier, only 1 ballot that I witnessed from a duplicate was for Trump. So I'm talking just a dozen off my sampling from that 1 shift of 6 a.m. to 2 p.m., none. And throughout the whole night, I only saw 1. 3 other challengers around me told me the same thing from their sampling. So, also, we challenged ballots all night. Every challenge was refused. They never carried it out. They never issued challenge ballots. There's no track, no remedy, no records. No recording of any challenge ballots the entire night. So we challenged. Poll workers changed duplicate ballots to straight Democrat ticket. So, for example, it would be like a mixed ticket. Bubbles filled in everywhere. I witnessed employees taking their pen and filling in the Democrat straight ticket when it's not. And so you're going to have other people testify that when it goes to adjudication that they see 2 different parties filled in. And then 9 times out of 10, you're also going to have testimony too that says that the employees were saying it should go to the Democrats. That's true. Because there's 200 tables, 150 tables, so however many tables there are, 5 employees per table, and they all have pens. And I witnessed them writing a ticket for the straight Democrat ticket. So I also witnessed duplicates of duplicate ballots, which was very strange to me. We were making a duplicate, take it back to the tabulator, and again, make another duplicate of the duplicate. I personally asked the employees, hey, why are we making, first verify, is this a duplicate of the duplicate? They said yes. I said, why? This is the tabulator says unknown reasons. Okay. So, and then I also at the tabulators did see the double counting on the jams. I saw that several times. They would take the ballots that were just scanned and just rescan them again once there would be a jam. And then around 2 p.m., I leave the room for about 5 minutes to grab a snack because they're saying, snacks are coming in, go grab a snack, go ahead. I leave the room 2 p.m. The minute I leave the room, they block out the whole room with coverings. They prohibited access back in for me, and they said it's because we're exceeding COVID capacity. Now I'm going to wrap up with this. Mind you, the entire night, this room was slammed. It looked like the New York Stock Exchange on its busiest day. And then at 2 p.m. the next day, after 70% of the employees have already finished their work, they left the room. Now they're emplacing the exceeded COVID capacity rules, which was pure discrimination.
All right, thank you.
I just have to add one thing to this, the ballots that were an issue. I was at table 57 where I said that I saw a stack of ballots which had a sticky note on it saying not an EPB/S. They didn't know what that meant, but it didn't take me long to figure out why it was saying what it meant. It is when they would scan a ballot, nothing would come on the system. So they would manually enter these, and that's when I figured out that they were not even referring to the poll book. So it is EPB/S, meaning election poll book or system. So none of these details were in either of those. And the thing that when I started writing down the ballot numbers and the last names of the person of the ballot that had the name on that ballot, they were all in sequence. These are absentee ballots, mail-in ballots. They cannot be in sequence. 2232 cannot have 2233 next to it because if they're mailed in, they come in all different numbers. And when I started noticing that these numbers are almost next to each other, like one or the other was in the middle, but then they were almost next to each other, my antennas went up. That's exactly when I thought something is not right here. Then I asked the supervisor. There was not even a date on those envelopes. It said November 0-2020. There was no second number there. Then I said, what is the date on this one? Then they got really mad at me. They said, you're not letting us do our job. You're disturbing us. And at that point, because we really don't want to be kicked out, so we were just kind of not challenging anything because we want to still stay in the room because we barely had anybody. Not only that, the sequence ballot numbers were all from the same area, like the Goddard Street in the downtown Detroit. Goddard Street, sequential ballots, signatures were all alike. They had no date stamp. It said it was empty after 0. There was no third or second or first or nothing. And none of them were coming up in the system. They were all being entered manually. They even knew that none of these details would even be in the poll book or in the system.
All right. Well, with that, thank you both for your testimony. We're going to go on to questions now. I'll start with Representative Steve Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you for being here. I think it's the most compelling testimony we've had tonight. You talked about the 6-foot rule, people being kicked out for that. There was a court case prior to the election dealing with this and saying that you had to allow a poll challenger to break that 6-foot rule to verify information. All right, I've got pretty good eyesight myself. I can't see someone's written address from 6 feet away. So the court case made it very clear that they did have to allow that. Now, when you're not challenging, you have to keep your 6 feet. Were people allowed to break the 6-foot rule to challenge? And then my second part, when these Republican challengers were kicked out, were they allowed to be replaced by another one? Because it was very evident that there was plenty of other possible Republican challengers there. Were they replaced by one or not?
I'll take the first, you can take the second. The first one, when you said the 6-foot rule, we were in fact given a paper with these rules saying that we can break the 6-foot rule when we have to challenge a ballot. We even had the printed paper with us, and when we would show it to the supervisor, he'd say, we are enforcing the rules that we were given. That's the rule your team that sent you gave you. We don't have to abide by it because that does not apply to us. And we have to keep low profile. You have to understand if we don't want to be kicked out. If we don't want to, I may not be because I'm brown. But all I'm saying is, but that was my trump card that I used all day. But then the thing is, that's not a privilege for a white person. So white people, I could see, were not even daring to ask a question, because if they were even a little bit louder, they would say, you're disturbing them, so they need to get out. And you have to understand the poll workers were ganging up with Democrats. They were all in on the same team, and the only people that are being isolated are the Republican, white male Republicans. So that's the racism. If people ask me, was I ever treated unfairly, I would say rarely. Come to India, you will know what racism is. But here, no, I've been treated with a lot of respect. Now I see white people are being treated as, so much worse than, I was ever treated. So those people were not able to really loudly challenge because they will get kicked out. They did not want to abide by that rule where we can break that 6-foot rule to challenge a ballot because they didn't want to listen to what we had to say.
As per the second question, no.
They were not being replaced.
Republicans were not replaced. So when a Republican challenger was escorted out, they were not allowed to be replaced by another one.
The only ones welcomed in were the media. No challengers from our side. But I would say there was two separate systems. There was our systems where we were exceeded COVID capacity, fall in line, follow the rules, and then there was the friendly welcoming. Oh, you're the media. Come on in. Oh, who are you with? You're with come on in.
Another thing I'll also have to say is when the GOP people were getting escorted out with or without handcuffs, every poll worker and all Democrats stood and clapped like it was some kind of, they all won a lottery ticket. And that is exactly when I decided I'm going to do this, because that was heartbreaking, because these people were doing a job, a volunteer job. They were not getting paid. They all were leaving their work to be here for their country to ensure election integrity. And they were treated like criminals, and that's not fair.
Not America. That's illegal.
Representative LeGrand.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And if I could just ask you the same question I asked the last witnesses. When did you, if you file an affidavit here, or when did you first make Trump's lawyers, when did you give them this story substantially?
I didn't meet any Trump lawyers because I was working for Election Integrity Fund. I gave my affidavit the same day on November 4th.
Okay, so
I don't know what happened with those affidavits, and I never met anybody from Trump team until, not even now. I haven't even met anybody yet.
Okay, you filed. So you're saying you filed an affidavit on this on November 4th?
November 4th.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you,
I in fact
Representative.
gave all the ballot numbers, the last names, the table number, everything that I observed the same day.
Thank you.
Thank you, Representative LeGrand. Next, we'll go to Representative Reilly.
Thank you. I just wanted to try to understand what this was like when somebody tried to challenge a ballot. So you would say I challenge a ballot, then what would happen after that? What was a series of events?
Even before the supervisor or the poll worker would respond to the challenge, the Democrats would just pounce and say, what are you challenging? And then when we try to give them what was the basis for challenge, as I said, they had no clue because they were not trained. Their only training was to block the GOP people. So when we would say this is what we are challenging, they'd be like, they're clueless, obviously. And then the poll workers, they would be hostile. And they're like, we are not going to stop what we're doing. If you have a problem, you go take it up with the supervisors. They were all in on it together, so nobody was going to listen to it. Not a single challenge was ever entered. And this was the same thing happening.
So then if you went to the supervisor, he would not do anything?
No, nobody would do anything.
So in addition to that, thank you. In addition to that, when there was no Democrat challenger, which I witnessed in the minority of times, I would make a challenge, and the head of the table would say, what's wrong? And I would say, this is wrong. And they say, no, that's not wrong. And I said, no, I'm challenging it. So, for example, when I just one example is I challenge you for filling in the Democrat straight ticket. Is that can I challenge that? No, it's not a challenge. No document, just push it through. That's what they did.
Oh, thank you.
Representative C.A. Johnson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair, please indulge me. As a woman from the city of Detroit, a woman who has lived, I'm talking about me now, who has lived in the city of Detroit all of my 62 years, and having spoken with many, and by the way, thank you, having spoken with many people who worked the TCF or TFC. TCF.
All right, let's let Representative Johnson continue. And please get to your question, Representative.
I will. So my question really to you, Mr. Chair, I'm going to repeat it again. These people, our guests, are sharing information, just sharing and speaking and speaking. No one is under oath. The world is watching us right now, and the world is watching right now, and there are one person after another who's testifying or who's making allegations, because that's exactly what they are, allegations of wrongdoing in the city of Detroit. I wonder, and I'm going to ask you the question, did you see any cameras at the TCF Center? All right, so.
And Representative, I just want to remind you, I think it was the purpose of today's hearing to hear from people across Michigan who witnessed things at the TCF Center. That's why we're here.
Well, here, and I'm not going to argue with you about that. Okay, so they're here, but they're taking so much time, and I see no Detroiters. There is one Detroiter. Stop that.
Please continue, Representative.
And there is one Detroiter, but I have many emails. Since there's no one who you have in this room to represent Detroiters, except a couple of us in this room, I have emails from Detroiters. We've taken, 2 hours?
Did you have a question? I'm willing. Please stop yelling. People in the audience, let me handle this. Representative, listen, we've had hearings in the past, as you know. We'll have more hearings. Today, we've invited Mr. Giuliani, and Mr. Giuliani has brought forward witnesses that he says have firsthand knowledge of fraud. That's what we are doing today.
And if we want to find out...
Please let me finish.
Yes.
All right. So if you want to do other hearings, we're doing more hearings. But today we're here to hear from these people. So do you have a question for these witnesses?
No, I have some concerns, many concerns, and I want to just share with you what the concerns are.
Point of order?
I'm sorry?
Do you have a point of order?
Yes.
What is your point of order?
Point of order is to have them under oath.
You're out of order. As I've said, this is something that is not done here in this state. It's really only...
it may not be done under the state, but you're allowing people to come in here and lie, and I know they're lying.
Representative, you're out of order. I've indulged you, but you're out of order, and we're going to move on.
And on behalf of my witnesses, I would like to point out that every single witness we've presented here has sworn an affidavit as to all of these facts.
And so...
Representative, please, I gave you some room there, but we're going to move on. We're going to go...
May I say something, please?
Sure.
If that is what you want me to do, I will do it. And I will still repeat the exact same thing I watched. And you know what? I also want to say one thing. If it is a lie, it may change because a liar has to have a lot of memory power. If it is truth, You can ask me in the middle of the night, it'll still be the same.
All right, I'm going to take this here. Please stop. We're going to move on now to Representative LaFave.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I appreciate it very much. Audience members, we're not going to be able to get to the end of this if we continue with interruption. So I would ask a little bit more patience with us. I have two questions, as we have two witnesses. I hope that's okay, Mr. Chairman.
If there are relevant questions, I will let you proceed.
If they're not relevant, Mr. Chairman, please rule me out of order. I would appreciate it. Question number one, as I heard from... Could you say your name again?
Hema Kolanagi Reddy.
Hema, thank you.
You want to try that?
I'm going to try it once. I'm not going to try it twice because I got a bad memory. I heard that there are sequential ballots from one street called Goddard Street that have no dates. Correct. Approximately how many would you say?
Each box would have 50 ballots. There were about two, three boxes there. I was already tired because we have no chairs. So I took down, after 20, 25 names, there's no point because you can see what's going on. So I immediately wrote down all those details, gave a sworn affidavit to Election Integrity Fund. And I said, this is what I witnessed. These are the names. These are the ballot numbers. And this is not the address, but then I told them that it's Goddard Street is something that just stood out because you can see it on the highway. So I know that name. I'm like, I don't even know what's happening. And we were told not to challenge anything at that point because they said this entire process needs to be challenged. So don't challenge. Try to stay in. Try not to get kicked out. So that's what I was doing.
Very helpful. Thank you. Andrew, approximately how many duplicate ballots did you see in general? And then, if you could, approximately how many of those duplicate ballots, and these are your words, not mine, do you believe were stolen or taken off of the table and brought to places that you believe they shouldn't have been brought to?
So, as my responsibility to stand in the center of the room by the duplicate table, an employee would come up and need a duplicate ballot, right? For example, just to layman's term, let's say there's a coffee stain on the ballot, right? Which none of these ballots had any real issues from as far as I know. They're all tabulator issues. But they would come grab a ballot, and my responsibility was to follow them to their table, to be the challenger, to observe over it. So there would be me, there would be the workers, and there would be a Democrat challenger, and we would observe over it. Throughout the entire time I volunteered, I would say between 2 dozen to 3 dozen. And there were times where we had people stationed around the room. And so if there was someone who was stationed, like a Michigan GOP volunteer, right, was in a specific area, I would tell that employee, hey, watch over this duplicate ballot because I need to run back to the center of the room in case someone steals more ballots again. So they would do that. And if no one was there, then I would watch over it. And I watched over maybe 2 to 3 dozen throughout the whole night. So that's the first part of the question. The duplicate theft started in the beginning of the night. Roughly 10:30 p.m., 10:15 p.m., I saw theft of duplicate ballots where they would grab 3, 4. So no clear number. The number that I saw was probably in the first shift, I would say over half a dozen, easy. Second shift, it was more hectic, and I would say roughly the same thing. But you also have to take and consider that the third shift from 6 a.m. to 2 p.m. the next day, and also the 1 a.m. shift, because people were leaving at 2 a.m. and 1 a.m. They wouldn't stay until 5 a.m. because we're less people volunteering because they're weeding off. That the table was guarded less, and we have less people, so there's more opportunity for theft. Does that help a little bit?
Absolutely. Thank you very much. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you. Representative Camilleri.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So if what you're saying about the tabulation of ballots is true, and that some of these ballots were counted multiple times, why is it that there are not more ballots than those who are tabulated in our poll book?
I do not know how your system works. I do not. One thing I know is there were several ballots that were not in the poll book or in the system, and they were being entered manually. So how are you finally taking a tally of it? I do not know that. All I'm here to tell is what I witnessed. I do not know, end of the day, how you put all of this data together and how you come up with a number. And if it's tallied like a balance sheet, great. I don't think we would be here if that tallied. My best guess is it did not, so that's why we are going through all this.
So what I'm saying is that, in total, the registered number of voters in Detroit is about 500,000 around. The total ballots cast was around 250,000.
Okay.
And so we don't see multiples here, and that many other people have alleged that there were far more people who voted than those who live in the city of Detroit, and that just does not add up. It just
Thank
doesn't
you,
add up.
Representative.
That
I
was
think
not
you've-
part of my
thank you.
testimony.
I know.
I
Thank
think you asked a question, and she said she wasn't familiar.
I'm good. Thank you.
Okay. With that, I think we appreciate it. I did want to ask you though. Do you have any? I mean, both of you have been there on the front lines. You've been there in the TCF Center. You've talked today about what you've witnessed. Do you have any suggestions for us as legislators on policies or things that we should look at in terms of how do we prevent some of these things from happening to people like you again in the future? Have you put any thought into that? Like if you were to see new laws or things that need to be looked at in terms of preventing in the next election some of these things from happening at the TCF Center?
I would give you my perspective as being an outsider. I come from a country where a lot of things go wrong. Our countries are known for corruption. But when it comes to elections, there is, from what I've seen here to what we used to do back in India, it is a lot more organized now because we have an identification system. And the fact that now, as the other representative said, that you can actually show up and vote without an ID, it's shocking. How can you allow that to happen? Like, a lot of people think all Indians look alike. I think all Chinese look alike. So how would you tell? If some Chow shows up, you can be anybody and you can vote. And if somebody with my name, you can't even tell my name. Anybody can vote on my behalf. So ID should be the basic requirement.
Please, let's let her testify, everyone. We want to allow the witnesses to speak. Thank you.
ID should be the basic thing, and there should be a cutoff date as to when you can request the mail-in ballots. It can't be like you can show up the same day and request it and give it the same day. The whole purpose of the ballot is defeated. I think you can put a lot of measures, maybe put policies that this does not get repeated because, and again, the fact that there was not a Republican present on every counting board, that was also a shocker. A lot of people I know from my own church, they wanted to work as a poll worker, but they were told that the positions were full, so they don't need any more Republicans. If only there was a Republican present at every table, maybe a lot of this would have been avoided. And also, I think, that the whole vitriol of the entire poll workers that were there, that to me was the shocking thing. I would expect a lot more respect. These are all fellow Americans. If it was towards an immigrant like me, at least maybe it's understandable, but these are all fellow Americans. Why would you hate them just because of their political affiliation? Maybe that could change. We are talking a lot about hate, BLM and everything. How about we also just extend it to, the white males or, whoever is being also treated very, that's discrimination what I noticed. And this is an outsider perspective.
Do you want to answer the question? Do you have any suggestions for us?
I'll be brief.
Yep.
I mean, simply, we just can't let it happen. The way we do it is up to you, and that can change. You have to think about it. Law changes over time, and it's going to continue changing for the next thousands of years, but we simply can't let this happen, because if we don't let this happen, then reality will change for the next thousands of years. So I would suggest maybe better enforcement immediately after the election, because clearly we're now heading into December. We don't want to cut it this close. We need, in the short term, a body that can say the day after the election or 2 days after the election, there's 20,000 dead voters, wipe them out immediately. And this should be apolitical. not political. They're just clearly dead. You know, have the database enforce it. Why are dead voters still now? They're certified now, and I'm not trying to make a political statement, but we certified that knowingly.
Thank you. Well, I know you both are very brave coming here today, and I understand it's shocking the things that you've said today about what you've witnessed at the TCF Center. So thank you both for your testimony. We appreciate it.